This is Learn from Others, where we interview a cross-section of successful individuals so you can learn from their experiences, achievements, and even their mistakes. We ask 4 questions that will educate and inspire. Greg Stanley will be your guide as we join our guest on a journey from adolescent daydreaming to success in today's world. Join us on this adventure as we learn from others together.
Well, hey, it's Greg Stanley. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. As you know, this podcast is designed to share the career journeys of successful individuals with students to help them crystallize their own career paths. Well, today I thought it would be fun to share the inspirational stories of the teachers who are educating our students. So over the next year, I hope to interview as many teachers of the year as possible. And today, I'm starting with Leila Kubesch, who is the 2020 Teacher of the Year for Ohio. Leila, how are you doing today? And thank you for joining the Learn from Others podcast.
I am doing very well, thank you.
Well, I really appreciate your time today because I think it's really important for us to recognize and honor the teachers that are really doing a wonderful job with our students. So thank you.
I am very honored to be on your show, and thank you so much for reaching out to me.
Yeah, and one reason I wanted to do this is I know there's been some teachers that have really influenced me in my past. And obviously, you're influencing students today. So I'm kind of curious, who inspired you to be a teacher in the first place?
When I was little, I grew up in a family that we didn't have much. My parents were in the Peace Corps, and they were doing service in Africa. And I went to a public school, and I struggled with the language. And one teacher, she was not even my teacher, that summer gave me a book. I didn't have any books, and I read it so many times, and I fell in love with the words in print. And that had a profound impact on my life, that I started to work like babysit, teach the children of diplomats, and I used all my earnings to buy books. And by the end of my time at the high school, I graduated as a valedictorian, and I saw the power of reading and early literacy, and that not only has impacted me as an individual, but it inspired me to become a teacher and to always have literacy as a mission.
Wow, that's really great. Now, what book was that first book?
It was a French series. It's Alice, which would be like Alice, and it has these children, and I remember in that book, it was about El Dorado, and my dad was from Colorado, and I did not know that. And on the last day, he said, well, we're not going to be here in Africa anymore. We're going to go to Colorado. So I told all of my friends that we're going to go to El Dorado, and everybody didn't even really think it was real until I actually left, and everybody was very upset. But it was just, everything in that book was so real. I loved everything. It captivated imagination. It created this a mindset of being open-minded, and maybe that there's a world outside of me that I was not aware of, and it was.
Wow, that's really cool. Now, where do you teach, and what grade do you teach?
I teach at Norwood Middle School. I teach 4 languages, teach 7th and 8th grade. I also teach English as a second language.
Okay. Now, what qualities do you feel make you successful as a teacher?
You have to love what you're doing. I used to think that you have to go by what you're good at, and I worked for American Airlines for a long time, and that's how I paid for my school, because I thought that's what I was good at, speaking languages and helping people. But deep in my heart, I felt like there was a void. I didn't care for what I was doing. I remember taking my checkbook when I go to the bank, and everybody get excited, like, oh, you work for the airline, that is so amazing. But I didn't feel it was anything amazing. And when I became a teacher, I would take my check and I'd go to the bank, and everybody goes, what grade do you teach? And I would say 8th grade. And they'd say, bless your heart. Like, my heart is fine. I'm so happy with what I'm doing. I'm so excited. And I think it's really love what you're doing.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. Well, now, what are some of the biggest challenges you face as a teacher? Is it time? Is it resources? Is it students?
Not at all. None of those are challenges. None. It's I love what I'm doing. I love the kids. Maybe the greatest challenge is children being able to express themselves. And so we have to be very creative in getting them to talk about what it is that interests them. That way you can weave that into the learning. And so, for example, I teach foreign languages, and I ask them, what do they struggle with? And 2 years ago, they talked about being able to focus in my classroom because they feel hungry. And so we talked about what are some ways we can solve that problem. And they ended up writing a grant, and we did piloting a breakfast in the classroom. And so I think of a problem as an opportunity. How can they express what it is that concerns them? That way they can turn that issue and make learning relevant and then propose solutions.
Right. Well, that's a great way to look at it. Now, do you have an example where you felt like you really connected with a student? Now, that could be either on a personal level or an educational level, where you felt like it finally clicked after working for a while?
Always it has. I know, I think it was 3 years ago when my students walked out of the classroom. And I think that was maybe March 14th. It was a day in March, and they all walked out wanting to be safe. And I remember that day we were forbidden from going out with the students. And I felt very conflicted because we are allowing the kids to go out. Well, we don't have a choice. They're going to go out. But I couldn't be there to make sure they are safe. And when they came back, one student asked me, and she said, "Do you support us?" And that's when it hit me that sometimes students don't realize what we have to do. That, of course I said, of course I support you. And they wanted to have a voice. They wanted to have visibility. They wanted to tell the world that they want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And,
wow.
It's when I said, "Do you feel like you're not supported?" And they said, "No, nobody listens to us. We're always in trouble. At home, we are reprimanded for not doing enough work, not getting along with siblings. At school, we are reprimanded for not doing enough work, for not getting along with peers." And I have never thought about that. And I wanted to support them. And that's when we want to support the children, but sometimes we don't know how. And I just asked them, "What would it be? What would you want?" And they say, "It's that. We want to have a voice and we want to have visibility." And so we started doing projects, and I would call the media to get them to have a voice and visibility. And, of course, where I teach, my students say, "Nobody will come to us." And I said, "No, of course, they will come."
Right.
And I would call, I would email, and sure enough, we were stood up like so many times. And I thought, okay, I want to help the kids have voice and visibility, what we do. What should I do? In the end, they say, "Well, we would like to have a talk show, we want to have our own talk show." I wrote grants, and they helped me. I had also participated in a live pitch by Fuel the Fire held in Cincinnati. I won 3rd place. And we ended up having getting momentum and getting community support. And now they do have 2 talk shows until the closing of the school. They had a talk show every day after school, exactly like what you're doing, where they bring in experts from the community to ask about questions they feel is important to them that would impact their lives. And so this
Wow.
is an example of how we can take a problem and find a solution.
So the students interview the professionals? Is that how it works?
Yes. Yes, they can. For a long time, they had a pediatric surgeon. They have coaches. They have dancers. They had a classical pianist. They had just the guest speakers were as unique as the children themselves. And so the children, by the end of the year, they are responsible for having 10 talk shows. And they can do it in any language. They can also do it in a language they speak if English is not their native language, as long as the guest speaker speaks their language. And I wrote a grant with Martha Holding, where we have received enough funds to update a studio that we already had. It's a partnership with Norwood Community Television.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a really cool program. That sounds like something fun and exciting for the kids to be involved in, and it's something that they can learn from. And then you also have local leaders or business professionals in the community who can give back to the next generation. So that's really cool. Love that program.
Well, it also helped us learn about the resources and opportunities in the community. For example, I was not aware of all the things that the Red Cross did.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's cool. Now, I know you said from a challenge perspective, you're doing pretty good. But if there's one additional resource you could have for your teaching role, what would it be?
That's a difficult question because I don't feel like I need anything. Right now, I wish I could be in the classroom. I wish I knew all about the different technologies available to make it work. I wish there was a way that all the students had access to technology, or not technology, the internet access. So these are the challenges that I face right now, needing to learn many new things in very little time.
Right. So to our audience, we are in the midst of COVID-19, probably 4 or 5 weeks into it, so everybody's at home. And actually, while we're talking about that, could you tell me a little bit about the challenges you're facing? So it sounds like connectivity to your students from an internet perspective is probably one of the biggest challenges you have, right?
Yes, definitely. My day starts at 7 and sometimes it ends at 11 p.m. Yes, well, this past Saturday I forgot the days of the week and I called a lot of a lot of students. So I feel like there's no break where at school okay, this is a lunchtime, this is your prep time. I don't have that. So my days seem to be much longer. You don't know when they start, you don't know when they end. So for me to and of course, if a kid calls me at midnight, I'm very excited to be able to connect and answer the question. So that's not an issue. But the issue is being able to explain things in a way that I used to, being in the classroom. So I started creating videos. I call them, but then they need supplies. How can I get that to them? And then I thought, okay, well, I can drive and deliver these items. But then when you go to a store, some stores, and say, well, we don't want to use cash because they don't want to touch anything. Then I say, maybe I shouldn't have anything that they can touch.
Right.
So those are the challenges. How can I maximize what I'm doing right now in a way that I used to and reach out to everyone the way I used to? I guess the resources, being able to have the knowledge, the skill, and the method to very quickly.
Right. So you could reach your students remotely as we're having to do today. Is that right?
Yeah. So because I think delivering information is not enough about service learning. We need things. We need to be able to work with resources, with things in our hand, not just by phone. So that is the challenge. But if you had asked me this question before COVID-19 and say, if you could have any resource, I would say there's really nothing that I need.
Well, that's good to know. That's really great to know. So if you would, having been named the Teacher of the Year for Ohio for 2020, what was that process like? Like, I don't even know. Like, where were you when you found out? Is it kind of like the Heisman Trophy Award where you get a statue? I don't know. What was that whole, give us an overview.
Dr. Sable, the superintendent of Norwood City School, called me and she said, I need you to come, we can meet. And I love the woman, and I said, sure. And she says, there's people from the media someone from the media that would like to talk to you. And I hated to tell her that, well, I didn't have experience with the media coming to our school. And she goes, no, they will come. I said, okay, I guess if you think they will come, I will stay after school. But deep down, I was working on a project with my students. I went to the office, and the person was extremely articulate, knew so much about education, and this is very unusual because I'm not experienced with someone who spoke like this or understood so much or be able to ask the questions that he was asking. And at the end of that talk turns out to be the superintendent of Ohio Public School, Mr. Paulo DiMaria. And he says, congratulations, you won the Ohio Teacher of the Year for the year 2020.
Wow. So did you have any knowledge that this was coming at all?
I had some knowledge because I had already been named one of the 4 finalists, so I knew one of us it was narrowed down to 4.
Wow. Well, that's really amazing. So what did you do right after that?
I went back to my classroom. I cleaned the desks because next day I was going to serve students snacks, so I made sure the classroom, my day didn't change with that information because I was not allowed to tell anyone for an entire month.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that was supposed to be, yeah, so you need to sit on the information I couldn't even tell my mother because she would tell everyone.
Right.
So I didn't.
Wow. Well, that's really amazing that you get this great, wonderful news and you go right back to work and you can't tell anyone. Wow. Okay. Well, now, is there anything while we have their ears you would like to tell your students?
To let them know that we miss them very much, and we also as educators, we do feel anxious, we feel uncertain, but for sure we want them to be safe, we want them to be healthy, we want them to know that we worry about them. And we love to hear their voices. I personally would love to be called every day by everyone if it was possible.
Right. Wow.
And we want them to take good care of themselves because we want to see them back healthy. And everything else doesn't matter whether it's graduation or a dance. When they're healthy, we can always make that up again.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your Teacher of the Year experience with us on the Learn from Others podcast. I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Learn from Others, where we help others succeed by sharing success. Where will our next adventure take us? Subscribe to find out. If you know of someone who has a cool career story or occupation, contact Greg through Instagram at Greg Stanley LFO. That's GregStanley LFO. And we will see you soon as we learn from others together.